Got it. There you go.
Okay. So I'm Sue Ellen Hirschman Cherubin. I'm president of Watertown Citizens for Peace, Justice, and the Environment. And as Tony mentioned, the program is being recorded. So we're asking everyone to use your name. And I think we're kind of asking people to stay muted until you're called on, have things to say. But as long as people have quiet backgrounds, I think that's okay for now. And if you would be sure to use the raise your hand option for questions or comments. And if you're on a phone and you can't do that, obviously just let us know, and so that you're not excluded. So this is our Watertown Citizens Land Acknowledgement with which we start our meetings. This land acknowledgement honors the indigenous peoples on whose traditional territories we are situated, the Pequawset Band of the Massachusetts tribe. Pigsgusset is an English rendering of the indigenous name for Watertown, which we understand to mean the meadows at the widening of the river. We acknowledge the continued presence and resilience and sovereignty of indigenous communities and nations today. And we thank the indigenous peoples for their goodwill in our efforts to collaborate in the challenge of decolonizing, recovering, and restoring indigenous histories, lives, and futures. And now we're just going to have some very brief updates from our working groups. I was going to just call on you, Jennifer. Would you like to give a quick update on Pigsgusset Initiative?
Yes, thank you, Sue Ellen, and hello to everyone. If you haven't heard, this week, starting tomorrow through next Tuesday, the 21st, is Indigenous Food Week at Branchline. And that's a program that Pigsgusset Initiative is sponsoring. And I will be putting in the chat a little public service announcement that Watertown Cable News created, and also the flyer that gives more information. So that's our most recent project, and I hope that you will all get to Branchline and try out the cuisine of Chef Sherry Pocknett, who is this year's James Beard Award winner.
Great. And there's a lovely article in the Boston Globe today about Indigenous Peoples Food Week, and mentioning what's happening at Branchline Restaurant in Watertown. Let's see. Pam, Friends of Bees, anything to report?
Yeah. Friends of Bees and Cats.
You're gonna pass? Is that what you said?
Friends of, there's a cat. Friends of Bees and Cats.
And cats.
Friends of Bees is working with Watertown Pollinator Pathways on a number of events over the winter. We've got things like building plant cages to protect tender perennials from rabbits. A couple of seed sowing workshops, growing under window lights over the winter. And if you would like to help learn more about these events and maybe help plan them, the next meeting, Pollinator, is tomorrow. And if you go to the website of Watertown Community Gardens and look at events, you'll find the link there. And I've also posted the link about the meeting tomorrow night on our website.
Great, thank you. Watertown faces climate change. Does anyone want to give a brief update? Okay.
Statewide climate priorities, we held a local forum on polluters pay, make polluters pay, and that's legislation filed by Steve Owens, our local state rep, to legislatively require the big greenhouse gas polluters, they gas companies mostly, to pay for mitigation because of climate change. So that's like a big push. I hope you're going to be hearing about that more and more. And then there's several other priorities that there'll be a big lobby day in December. And locally, We've worked with WE3C and we've submitted to all the city councils what our climate priorities are. We have a group that's working specifically on drafting some local zoning around buildings and new buildings and what their energy use is. And our transportation group met with the new transportation planner, who seems to be lining up with our goals to reduce car miles. And we have an ARPA application to do a local transit plan with those goals in mind, which seems to be getting very, very favorable reception from the city council.
Sounds good. Thank you, Deborah. Does someone from Peace and Common Security like to give any updates? Susan?
Yeah, hi. Right, we're answering a petition to Representative Catherine Clark, asking her to endorse House Res 77, introduced by Massachusetts Rep. Jim McGovern. It calls on the U.S. President to embrace the goals and provisions of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. We have quite a few, and we'll probably think about when we're going to actually deliver them. And I will put a link into the chat so that you can access this petition online if you haven't already signed it. We've been running around getting signatures, but we'll take more online if we can get them. And then the other thing that we're doing is we are sponsoring a silent vigil and stand out this coming Sunday at 1 p.m. in Watertown Square. We are asking for a ceasefire and negotiations to end the killing in Palestine, Gaza, and Israel. There'll be speakers immediately afterwards in the Delta. Abby Yana will be one of the speakers, and the other is a Palestinian man. So you can come at 12:30 to make signs or bring your own. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that. Oh,
I
okay.
think you did a great job, and thanks for putting it in the link. I mean, putting the link.
I will do that as soon as I stop talking. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Susan.
We sure could use a few more signatures online. This was our first effort to try to do something online, petition online, I should say. So we seem to be doing a little better face-to-face getting signatures, but whatever you can do to spread the word about the online option would be appreciated.
Sure. And lastly, I'll give a brief report on behalf of the Watertown Citizens Refugee Support Group. We've had some really wonderful news this past week about two of the families we've been helping for the last few years that got their citizenship, which is pretty exciting when that happens. And then on the really difficult end is that the 16 families that we were originally asked by the state to care for, Haitian, mostly Haitian, a few from Dominican Republic, at the small inn on Arsenal in Watertown, started with 16 families. And then in the last 2 weeks, so less than 2 weeks, that is now up to about 40, more than 40 families. And we now have 96 people in this little hotel. So it's been pretty overwhelming for our group to try to respond and deal with all the things that we have dealt with in the past. And the original 16 families, we were able to just pour into doing everything from physicals and vaccinations and testing for English at the schools and getting all the kids literally registered and everything taken care of. So they started school right after Labor Day. But that was 16 families. And now we've got 43 children and 53 adults in this little hotel. And the owners of the hotel have now decided to turn the entire hotel over to the state. So there'll be no other guests except these primarily Haitian families. So it's been really, really daunting, but we're doing whatever we can. And that's pretty much it for the moment.
Thank you. I'm
So
going
at
to
this point, yeah, at
take
this
it from
point,
the,
I was just going to turn things over to you, Tony, and
Thank you.
in terms of welcoming
Yeah.
guests. And it's wonderful to see Anna, and of course, wonderful to have Denise here. So, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Every time we start our meetings with the review of our working groups, it always amazes me how much we are doing as an organization. It's always inspiring. I'm really excited about tonight's topic: can nuclear war be prevented? And we're particularly excited about having Denise come be on this and present to us tonight. I thought it would be we want to appreciate our co-sponsors and ask them if they would want to say a few words. This is how, just to give you a little bit, we're going to do that, and then I'm going to then Anna is going to introduce Denise, and then we'll just turn it over to Denise, and when she concludes, we'll have a Q&A discussion. So we have plenty of time, so people should be thinking of their questions throughout the presentation. And again, we'll be using raised hands as opposed to using the chat. I always find the chat a little distracting when I want to be actually listening to the speaker. And we keep getting people coming in. So let me first start with Susan Mirsky. Susan is the coordinator of the Nuclear Weapons Working Group of Mass Peace Action. Mass Peace Action is our statewide peace and justice organization, and a wonderful organization, and the most, I don't want to say most productive, but one of the largest and one of the oldest working groups within Mass Peace Action is the Nuclear Disarmament Working Group. So Susan, if you want to just say a few words about what the group is doing, please go right ahead.
Great. It's a pleasure to be here, and boy, this topic is so important. It keeps on being important, and we keep on finding new ways to talk about it, new avenues for working on it. At the Mass Peace Action Nuclear Disarmament Working Group, I should say we have our next meeting this coming Sunday at 5 p.m. and you are all most welcome. And I see some people here who are on that group. We discuss all manner of how nuclear weapons are involved and a threat to us, and all that we can do about it. So we look at what we can do legislatively. We look at what is happening in the world, sort of a geopolitical sense of where there is nuclear threat around the world. We look at it. We have two very active subgroups. One is public engagement and movement building, and they've been very active and have done lots of good work. We also have a missile defense group that looks at the weapons that are being used, being made. Let's see, it seems like we do so much more. Of course, we used to have a no first use working group, but we decided to work with the Back from the Brink campaign because they have that as part of their group, their discussion. We work with warheads to windmills, and we work with Diffuse Nuclear. So these are national groups, and we are trying to be in touch with what peace groups are doing around the country. I'm sure I've left out a lot, but there you go. There's always something new to be said for nuclear weapons. Keeps you on your toes, right?
Thank you, Susan. When we started to plan, one of the things that we talked about early on when the Ukraine war began was the threat of a nuclear exchange, and how it in some ways raised the issue to be more in the news and in people's minds. And now we have a horrific war going on in Israel and Palestine, Israel and Gaza. And once again, the potential for a nuclear exchange or the use of nuclear weapons is there. And so it seems very timely that we continue to have this discussion and continue to urge our representatives to support the House Resolution 77.
You bet. And we shouldn't forget our move to China, right?
Right. Okay.
Right there.
And I'm going to now turn this over. And I just want to say it's been wonderful to get to know Anna and to be connected a little bit with Greater Boston PSR and the Back to the Brink hub, the Boston hub of Back to the Brink. And it's a pleasure to introduce her as I forgot your full title, whether it's executive director but I'll call you the executive director of PSR. Anna?
Great, thanks, Tony, so much. A couple of minor corrections. One is, and you wouldn't know this from reading my name, but I pronounce my name Anna.
Oh,
And no problem. And the other is, it's actually Back from the Brink, because we're trying to step back from the brink rather than to the brink. It's a common mistake that people make, but we don't want to step onto the brink. We want to step back from the brink.
Must
So
be
I'm the
me.
executive director of PSR Boston, Greater Boston, otherwise known as GBPSR. And I'm part-time, but we have an active board, so we're able to go get a lot done. And Tony just asked me to say a couple of things about the Boston hub of Back from the Brink. Denise will talk more broadly about the Back from the Brink campaign, but there are hubs all around the country of people who are doing work more locally focused, which then tie into the national work. And so the Boston hub is pretty active. We now have over 20 people in our working group, and we meet every other Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. We welcome anybody to join our calls. It's a Zoom call. And if that time doesn't work for you, we can shift the times around. So we can have a meeting at night. It's just that right now, the majority of people prefer the day. We work at trying to get our local legislators informed and involved in, both HRES 77, but also the S1487 and the nuclear bills that are happening at the state, focused on Back from the Brink initiatives. It's really exciting. And it's, for me, people ask me how I can do work that's focused on such a terrible threat. And I think if I didn't do this work, I'd feel like I was just letting it be. And that's not an option for me. So just feeling like I'm engaged gives me hope, and it gives me hope to connect with other people who also feel they can do that. So please reach out to me. I'll put my, I'll put info@gbpsr.org that's an email address that goes to me. And so if you want to join our bi-weekly meetings or just show up whenever you can, 12:30 on Wednesdays, we'd love to see you and connect. And it's great to actually know other people in the Boston area. So
Just quickly, for anyone who might not know, that PSR stands for Physicians for Social Responsibility.
thank you, Sue Ellen. Yes. And so PSR, this is one member of the coalition that is Back from the Brink. We're just a member group. And then PSR has many chapters, but we won't go into that right now. The Greater Boston chapter was the founding chapter. I always have to say that, so we can be proud of our heritage. And I did want to introduce Denise tonight. I'm so glad she's joining us from Michigan, representing LA. Let me just pull up this. Let's see. Okay, so Denise is associate director of PSR Los Angeles, and she directs their nuclear threats program, which advocates for nuclear weapons abolition and policies that prevent exposure to radioactive waste and contamination. Locally, that means leading PSR LA's efforts to fully clean up the Santa Susana Field Laboratory, a contaminated nuclear and rocket engine testing site located just 30 miles from downtown Los Angeles. She also leads PSR LA's participation in the Back from the Brink, which is this national grassroots campaign that brings communities together to abolish nuclear weapons. And I'll let you, Denise, expound upon that if you want to tell people about your, how you came to appreciate the threat of nuclear weapons, if you'd like to fold that in. Thanks so much, everyone.
Hey, it's go time. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much, all of you, for doing what you do. That's just an amazing amount of work that you all are doing there. in Massachusetts, which is absolutely the leading state in the nation for nuclear abolition advocacy. Although now that I've got a new person on the ground in LA, I'm hoping California can give you all a run for your money. We oughta. But you've got this long, wonderful tradition of incredible work on this issue. In terms of just a little bit more on me, just hearing you talk and based off another conversation I had with someone the other day, I think part of what attracts me to this particular campaign, Back from the Brink, really is my background in community organizing around the Santa Susana Field Laboratory. That is where I cut my teeth, where I've spent, up until, 2018, pretty much when I started doing Back from the Brink work. And it really involved organizing, which is basically leveraging relationships at greater and greater levels. So I was working on the local, county, the state, and the federal level for that cleanup. And our nuclear abolition work in LA, at least during the years I was doing it, we were largely doing a lot of educational events. We film screenings. We did our Hiroshima Nagasaki Day. When we'd get word from national that there was something we needed to take action on, we'd send that out to our list. But I always felt that we were doing this hard work of telling people from a health perspective the horrible, devastating consequences of the nuclear weapons have, the nuclear war, but also their production and waste. And particularly when it comes to nuclear war, the magnitude of the problem is so great. And then when people wanted to get involved, I always felt like what I had to offer wasn't sufficient. That there was there had to be more meaningful ways for people to get engaged in this issue. Otherwise, it sort of felt like it was almost doing like, scaring people without really giving them something to engage in, and it did not prove a good organizing strategy. In 2018, when Back from the Brink was founded in 2017, and I'm going to do the whole sort of Back from the Brink thing. But when I first got involved with it and realized that I could do this sort of work at the local level, and then we could bring this resolution to the city council in Los Angeles, and we could start to break out of our silos by reaching out to our EJ partners and the Habakasha group and the faith group and to veterans, and bring them together around this initiative. And then see, the incredible reception that we had, and knowing, LA and California is generally a leader in the country in terms of progressive social policies. Just light bulbs started going off for me. And then that same year, we got a California state resolution adopted. And that was sort of, for me, like, so just my kind of a eureka moment in terms of a different way that I could anyway go about organizing for this issue that would have impact, that I could do local work that would impact federal policy and use this, community organizing model that I was already really familiar with. And so that's sort of what jump-started my passion for this work and for this campaign. So I know that many of you here are involved in Back from the Brink. I recognize names and faces. So some of the stuff that I will say you've heard before, but I will I've added some new slides, and we'll talk some stories and can talk all the way through it. So I will begin. So first, I'm going to do the technical part of sharing my screen and do slideshow, and then move this back over here. Okay. So I don't need to tell all of you folks about the incredible state of danger that we're in right now, the heightened risk for nuclear war, with the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists moving the clock this year to 90 seconds before midnight. The conflict in Ukraine, nuclear armed states, of course, and we have now Gaza, which has while there's not been there was an elected official there who did threaten the use of nuclear weapons, and she was reprimanded. But I think what that story tells us, this little headline in the bottom right corner there, is just how little information there is on what a nuclear weapon would do to be that cavalier about it. It also shows, I think, a good amount of misinformation that folks have about nuclear weapons. So this really is the time for folks who want to get involved to get involved, and for us to redouble our efforts in reaching new constituencies, new groups of people, to get them on board, to build and demonstrate pressure to abolish nuclear weapons. So some of the key challenges that I think Back from the Brink helps to address, and that I see, there's many more challenges. And I know I'm breaking PowerPoint 101, which is having a lot of text on the screen, but it also helps me keep my place. So of course, we know that there's people who don't understand the risk or the danger, but I think a larger problem is, and I have this, even within my own organization sometimes, a belief that it's not possible to make a difference, or that nuclear weapons can be abolished. And so we seek to address that. We also know that right now the nuclear disarmament constituency in the United States is small, lacks diversity, and really has no political power. And that's unfortunate because our federal representatives do influence the executive branch. Many of them, and I've done enough lobby meetings to know, also don't know some of the key information about nuclear weapons. Lobby meeting I had a couple of weeks ago with someone who's on the Armed Services Committee thought we had a first use policy. So there's that, but by and large, these folks are called our representatives because they represent us. Until or unless there's enough constituent demand for them to champion these issues, to show leadership on them, they're not going to do it. Unfortunately, traditionally, most of the advocacy of nuclear weapons is led by and directed by Beltway groups who simply don't have the capacity or the networks to mobilize folks on the ground who can bring this consistent, sustained, visible constituency for nuclear disarmament and put the pressure on the representatives. Another key problem is funding for this work. The movie Oppenheimer cost $100 million for one movie. That's 3 times as much as philanthropists spent on nuclear disarmament last year, and very little of that money went to grassroots work. So that's another thing, another challenge that we face. And of course, just though we have numerous intersections with our work, with climate, with environment, with social justice, with democracy, we still can remain are largely siloed. I think that's changing now. I do think the last couple of years, some of that is changing, but these are some of the key challenges that I think Back from the Brink really does help to address. What is Back from the Brink? We are a coalition of individuals and organizations and elected officials that are working towards nuclear abolition, and we have a set of common sense policy solutions to reduce the risk of nuclear danger as well. We work to build and demonstrate public demand for nuclear abolition in the U.S., to reform a U.S. nuclear weapons policy through local community-based organizing. And we were founded after the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was adopted in late 2017 as a vehicle to build and demonstrate this demand for nuclear abolition in the U.S. and to provide really ways for anyone to get involved. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, I think most of you know about it, but just a few things for those who may not. It is largely a response from the lack of compliance with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which already commits nuclear weapon states to get rid of their nuclear weapons through Article 6. And so out of that frustration, and there's a typo, arson tolls. Anyway, out of that frustration is what gave birth to the treaty. It was adopted by 122 countries, which is 2/3 of the world's nations. 93 countries so far have signed it and 69 have ratified it. The treaty makes it illegal under international law to develop, test, produce, manufacture, or otherwise acquire, possess, or stockpile nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices. However, it is opposed by the US and all countries who have nuclear weapons. It is possible for a nuclear armed country to sign the treaty first and then eliminate their arsenals, which they would be required to do the minute that they sign per the treaty. But it's really unlikely that any are going to do that if the other ones don't do it as well. And that's why we talk about a multilateral agreement in our platform. The Back from the Brink platform is calling upon the United States to prevent nuclear war by actively pursuing a verifiable agreement among nuclear armed states to eliminate their arsenals, to renounce the option of using nuclear weapons first, to end the sole unchecked authority of any U.S. president to launch a nuclear attack, to take nuclear weapons off of hair trigger alert, and to cancel the plan to replace the entire nuclear arsenal with enhanced weapons. We have been endorsed by over 460 organizations of all kinds, faith, policy, peace, and enviro, and those continue to grow and demonstrate that support. And again, as I discussed, the local organizing really is the thrust of this campaign. We believe nuclear weapons are a local issue for numerous reasons, whether it's tax dollars spent, whether it's being targets in the event of a nuclear attack. Many communities have either marshallese populations, have downwinders. Many of the cities that we're doing local work with really try to pull in what's relevant to their cities when they do this work with their cities. And so this is just sort of a collage of photos of folks doing this work throughout the country. A lot of the campaign is built around these local resolutions as an organizing tool, as an educational tool, as an advocacy tool. And what I really like about them is, one, I like that they can be customized. And we've seen Madison, Wisconsin just adopted a resolution and they were able to include divestment in theirs. That's really powerful. Some have paired their resolutions with, calling for diplomacy with Iran or making their city a nuclear weapons free zone. So people do get creative with these, and often, again, will pull in local issues into the resolutions. And I also like them because in terms of people getting educated on this issue, there's a lot of reports, a lot of articles, a lot of things people can read, but for busy people, particularly elected officials, resolutions really distill it down. And what we've done recently is we've added sources. So you can see there that we've got a new resolution up, and this is sort of some of the this is what a basic Back from the Brink resolution looks like. We have over 80 municipal, county, and state legislative bodies that have adopted these resolutions so far. And really, the resolutions are meant to, one, impact federal policy. Each city that adopts one sends it to their congressional delegation, to the president. But then organizers are able to use these resolutions in their lobby meetings to really show their congressperson that these cities in your district, these organizations in your district, these leaders in your district want you to champion this issue. And as an example, a very recent one is 2 days ago, for people, what's a resolution matter? We met with Adam Schiff's staff, and we're having a conversation with a staff member, with a fellow from the State Department. And she was listening, and when we said that we had a resolution that was about to be introduced in Burbank, in Schiff's district, she was like, wait, stop, wait a minute, can you tell me about that again? And can you send that to me when you have it? Like, that was that got her attention. And she's like, I want to know more about that. Please send it to me when you have it. Let me know more. So, the idea of building power from the ground up, of local organizing, impacting federal policy, it's got legs, and we're seeing that now in some of the HRS 77 work as well. After the Los Angeles resolution was adopted, ICANN launched a parallel campaign for cities worldwide called the Cities Appeal, and now hundreds of cities worldwide are part of the Cities Appeal, and most of the U.S. cities that are part of that came through Back from the Brink resolutions. So this is a wonderful. We had Beatrice Finn. This was, I think, 2019. Who was able to come just to thank. This is a Washington, D.C. City Council member with Danny Hall with Soka Kakai on the left, and then with Paul Koretz, who was the LA City Council member who introduced our resolution. We also have the support of local and state elected officials. In 2021, we did a sign-on effort. We had over 320 signed this letter across 41 states to President Biden. And as many of you know, we have a similar initiative now, which I'll be talking about. We also have a good number of civic leaders and experts that have endorsed the campaign. And I'm highlighting Bill Perry because it gets people's attention. This was another thing that she sort of stopped and listened to. But also because he he spoke, he actually participated in his own city town meeting to adopt it back from the Brink resolution. I really, really do like to watch these hearings and watch people who aren't us talk about nuclear weapons. I love the Newton hearing in Massachusetts. That was a fantastic one. Needham was another one that was great for me to watch. And in this case, you know, it was Atherton, and it was in 2020, right after COVID. And, you know, they just go, okay, our next speaker is Bill Perry. And there he was in his living room testifying in support of his town adopting it back from the Brink resolution. We are working to build bridges with other social justice movements and really highlight some of the intersections between nuclear weapons and environmental justice, social justice, racial justice, democracy. This is last year, we partnered with the Poor People's Campaign for their Moral March in Washington, and really brought several other peace and disarmament groups along with us. And we also did an event last year talking about the connection between nuclear weapons and democracy, which is ever remains a concern. And we also have worked to build bridges a lot over, I'd say well over a third of our endorsers are faith groups. And so this year we've gotten endorsements from the National Baptist Convention of America and the National Councils of Church, very large groups. And of course, other national faith groups, almost every faith really is represented back from the Brink. And lots and lots and lots of the chapters of Pax Christi and other churches are also involved. This year, one of the things we did to help groups on the ground was to provide materials and information on organizing around the Oppenheimer film. We had materials go out to 23 communities across 16 states. And one thing that I really liked about this was, and you can't really see it in the middle folder, but with the flyers, we co-branded them. So the national campaign information was at the bottom, but it directed people to the local group. It said, you know, Chicago Peace Action is an endorsing member of Back from the Brink, get involved locally. So we were able to really direct people to their local organization as part of this national campaign. We also built an advocacy page full of resources for people who wanted to take action on this opportunity. And I think, you know, it may be useful again come award season in January and February. I think the film will be in the news again, and there may be more opportunities for public education and getting people involved. This year, our big campaign, our big federal campaign is HRS 77, which is a House resolution mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, introduced by Representative McGovern. The resolution is called Embracing the Goals and Provisions on the Treaty of the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and it basically mirrors Back from the Brink resolutions, with the exception of it put a little bit more detail on the multilateral agreement, specifically specifying pursuing and concluding negotiations on a new bilateral nuclear arms control and disarmament framework with the Russian Federation before 2026, which is the end of the START treaty. And so that I think is an important piece of this resolution, which has, I think, helped us get co-sponsors. We had an organizational letter signed by 154 organizations to members of Congress around this. And to date, we have 41 co-sponsors. Ted Lieu, who was my representative, it was the most recent one to sign on. And we're in lock because it's a 2-year bill. So all of the, you know, some of the folks that have said maybe, or I'll get back to you later. And I know you have a campaign there with Clark. We're going to do more work in those districts. We're going to try to get more resolutions passed in those districts. We're going to, you know, do what we can so that we can come back, say, in late spring or early summer and have another meeting and demonstrate more constituent support and see if we can't, you know, move people over the finish line. I will say another thing that I've realized with HRS 77 is just the importance of follow-up. These folks are busy. So we have, you know, a lot of these co-sponsors came through local groups on the ground. Some of them, you know, we have the organizers from the national campaign who are doing the work, and really, it was just a lot of follow-up that helped us get over the finish line with a bunch of these folks. We have incredible resources on our website for folks who want to get engaged in this advocacy. We did a webinar, which if you haven't seen, it's really great with Representative McGovern. He had some real insights, into how to work with Congress, how to build relationships with Congress. And so if you didn't get a chance to see that, it's on our website, and I do recommend it. We have now another initiative, which is wrapping up as of today, which is a letter for local county and state elected officials to President Biden, urging him to send an observer to the second meeting of state parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. This year, that meeting is taking place in New York at the UN. I'm very excited to be going. It will be my first international conference. It will actually be my first time in New York. And just to see folks from all over the world coming there along this, I think is going to be very inspirational. For the U.S. to send an observer would be monumental. They, I think, believe we actively opposed when Australia wanted to send an observer, like just to send an observer. However, it's an important, it would send a signal to the rest of the world that the U.S. is taking this issue seriously. So we'll be releasing this letter tomorrow. And those of you who are on our list, and if you're not, please do get on our list. And I'll tell you how to do that at the end. We'll be sending out information on how you can amplify this letter, particularly within local media. We have, I think, 217 signatures. Other ways to get involved. As I mentioned, endorsements matter. They particularly matter when you're going organizing district by district. So folks can endorse the campaign and ask others to endorse the campaign as well. Of course, calling, writing, and meeting with House representatives to co-sponsor HRS 77, organizing municipal resolution efforts. Also, presentations. I think this is another really strong tool. I'm working on basically getting a PowerPoint very much like this one, and a script that we can have out on our website that we can give out to our hubs that folks can use. Because again, a lot of times it's just a matter of getting people's attention. And when we get it and we tell them there's something that they can do, they do it and they get involved. We have not really had any, while we, have had some members of Congress and some of our state elected officials who may have been skeptical, in talking to other groups and other activists, we almost always get hand raisers in every meeting that help grow and build what we're doing here. The writing letters to the editor are helpful. We do have local meetups every third Tuesday of the month. Obviously, social media is important. We could do a lot better job of that, but again, capacity becomes an issue, but it's important. That's where a lot of folks are getting their news these days. Forming a hub, which you folks have there already. And then we have, in addition to being an endorsing organization, organizations can become partner organizations, which means a deeper level of committing to, always share with supporters or members of that organization, back from the brink events, that sort of thing. I'm going through this really quickly, but that's good. We'll just talk. So how to endorse or get involved on our website under the Take Action. Our website is preventnuclearwar.org, by the way, which we'll put in the chat when I'm done. So you can endorse there as an individual or an organization. Local and state elected officials can just also endorse, and they have and they do. I haven't gotten a recent count on that through this latest effort, but I'm pretty sure we'd be over 400 now when I finish that up. We have advocacy tools that we provide on our website. Also under Take Action, and that includes an organizing toolkit, a guide to doing resolutions, other organizing materials. We also have a webpage called Nuclear Weapons 101, which touches very lightly on some of the intersections of nuclear weapons with other issues. We always can use support. We have these very groovy t-shirts that you could get if you donate $75 or more. They're a bit of a challenge to keep updated in terms of the resolutions on the back, but they're fun. And our basic information for getting in touch is here. preventnuclearwar.org. Jeremy Love is one of our lead organizers, and his email is there, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and put my email in the chat. I have not talked for 45 minutes now. But I'm hopeful that we can have a discussion, because there's a lot to unpack in there. And so first I'm going to put in the chat.
And Denise, if I could add something to your local resolution concept. I was nervous about bringing a resolution to my town in Marshfield, even though I know the subject matter well, because it's a new group. You never know how people are going to respond to it. You're up in front of in our case, we had to go in front of a town. Sometimes there are city's counselors in our town. We had town meeting. But what I learned from the process is that it's really a way to have a discussion. So even if a resolution gets put forward and doesn't get passed, of course the goal is to get it passed, but even if it doesn't get passed, it's a way for people to have this conversation. And to me, that's invaluable, because people are not talking about nuclear weapons. They're worried about it. Like Denise was saying, most people don't think that they think their effort is going to be a drop in the bucket of this huge undertaking. They think my effort is worthless. But when they realize that there's communities, 20 communities now across Massachusetts have passed resolutions. There are communities all over Massachusetts tied to communities all over other states, tied to a national resolution. It's pretty impactful, and I think it's powerful. And so for us to have the conversation in my town, we actually wound up passing it fairly easily. But when I had to stand in front of my local grocery store to get signatures, to get 150 signatures. And, there's a lot of people who dismiss you and, write you off. I would try to just say to myself, let it go. Let's move on and have a conversation with the next person. Because for every person who doesn't care, somebody else cares more. So I just felt like it was a really empowering process. You don't necessarily need to even have a win in order for it to feel like a win and to be a win in conversations and knowledge. So
yeah, it's a lot like voting, like, what does my vote matter? Well, your vote matters when everybody votes. And so I think it's becoming more, now that there are so many cities on board, I think it's easier for other cities to come on. And I also, there's only been one or two times where something's ever come up to a vote and didn't pass. A lot of time, most of the time, especially maybe not in the town hall sort of situations, but if the council member is going to introduce a resolution, they want to make sure it passes. So we've had times we pulled it because we didn't have the support, and it didn't get to a vote. But it's, some of the resolutions, the Madison one took a long time. The folks in Madison worked on that for a long time. Other ones, happened, just got put on a consent calendar, and they were just like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. So it really seems to vary, but it is a way to sort of to systematically, and it's a scalable campaign to be able to look at various districts. And so again, we while we are lacking somewhat in capacity, that's growing every day too. So, I see Peter has his hand up, and he's wearing a Back from the Brink t-shirt. That's awesome.
Let me just, before we take questions and start with Peter, let me just thank you, Denise. We really appreciate your presentation and how clearly you speak about this issue, and how you have such a command over the information and the strategies for a change. And thank you, Anna, for adding on a little bit about Massachusetts and what's happening. But Denise, we really do appreciate the updated slideshow that you put together and your presentation. And let's now turn to questions, and we'll start with Peter.
Hi, Denise, and hello, everybody. Peter Metz sitting here in Needham, okay, but I love Watertown. But Watertown's got to get with it, guys. You got to pass the brink. Pass back from the brink, excuse me. The t-shirt I'm wearing was actually personally sent to me by Denise. Congratulations. Thank you, Denise, for when we pushed it through the Needham town meeting. Jeepers, almost 4 years ago now. And all I want to do is point out that Massachusetts has more cities and towns that have endorsed Back from the Brink than any other state. But we're slipping behind, folks. So we got to get going or we're going to lose our leadership position. So Watertown, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Louise Coleman.
Thank you.
Mhm.
No, I was just thinking about how important it is to do like sometimes like things that don't seem like they would be very important, but they are, like the letters to the editor. I mean, it's like really well, one of the hardest things we have to deal with is the fact that people don't want to talk about this issue. It's really very, very difficult, very frightening. But once they do start, and again, it goes back to not only thinking about the situation, but figuring out what people can do and for them to feel they can do something. One of the other thing that we had some pretty good success with lately was the Oppenheimer movie. That to have people go to the showings and pass out flyers about preventing nuclear war. So that was another thing that has made it more viable to talk about in public. Is just again just getting it front and center. Is so that people get over their hesitation. Not understandably they're hesitating, but if we don't deal with it, then that's it. So anyways, it's mostly, I think, just there's opportunities, there's ways that that people can interact with local media, and it works.
People read letters to the editor. They do.
Yeah.
Jennifer?
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. And this actually goes along with what Louise was just talking about. The Watertown Free Public Library will be offering the Oppenheimer movie on Saturday, the 25th.
Wow.
And I'm planning to go because I missed it in the theaters. And you mentioned that there are materials for educating people in conjunction with the film. So is there a way to get those to have at that production or that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you just Mass Peace Action has a flyer that actually, it was interesting that quite a few people from Mass Peace Action went to the showing, sometimes multiple showings, and passed the flyers out when people were going in or coming out. Yeah, I'm sure that Tony has your email, and we'll find a way to get the flyers to you.
And we have materials as well.
Sure.
I think again, you'll want to be directing folks to local action, but we also have these little these HRS 77 advocacy
Yeah,
cards.
those are great. Well, McGovern is from here, so that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you're ahead of the game there.
Oh yeah. I went to his annual Irish brunch the other day at O'Connor's Pub. So it was his usual very informative and pleasant and social self.
Jennifer, thank you for that information. I didn't know about that, and I'm sure our working group will try to pull something together. We have been on fast pace recently of activities, and once we get through our very important vigil, this silent standout this coming Sunday, we will start to think about what kind of presence we could have on the 25th of November. Is that correct?
Yes, it's 1:30. It's 1:30 at the Watertown Free Public Library in the Watertown Savings Bank room. And I'm happy to help too. So just get materials to me or show up or whatever, but I'm planning to go there.
Great.
So
I think we'll have people. We had 5 of us collecting signatures at the CVS the other day. So I think we'll try to make sure that we have enough people collecting signatures at least a half an hour beforehand, or maybe
I'm guessing that since it's free, it may get a good turnout for people like myself who missed it in the theaters.
Right.
I think it's a good opportunity to get the word out to people.
And I know Lillian and I are going to meet this week to talk a little bit more about how we might approach our city councilor. Just so full disclosure here, I've been on the council for 14 years and just got reelected for another 2 years. And it's thinking about Lillian's interest in trying to get something moving there. So we're going to try to come together, and I don't know, Peter, whether we can pass it or not, but based on Anna's suggestion that, the passing is important, but not the end goal. The end goal is to talk to people about the issue and to raise the issue. So we'll figure something out. Susan, your hand is up.
First, I'm so glad you said that Sunday's rally was going to be silent. So I will keep my shouts and chants to myself. Ooh, good thing you let me know. Also to say that something that was developed in the Western Mass that they were using, which we tried to adopt here and made our own, and you're welcome to use, doesn't belong to anybody, is there were postcards, and one side was a nuke map, and it said, where do you live? Or this is where I live. And it showed what could happen if a nuclear bomb, if there were an attack. And that we related to the other side of sending to Warren and Markey, and to our local representative, Jake Auchincloss in Newton, to try to get him to sign on to HRES 77. But we did that at the Oppenheimer movie.
Great. Any other questions people might have or comments they want to make?
I have a question, which is about Representative Clark. What folks have been doing so far? Any responses you may or may not have gotten from her office?
I
Anna?
can quickly, yeah. So the Boston Hub wound up getting a meeting with her staff, her legislative aid, foreign aid, and they indicated that she is generally supportive of this issue in general. But because she's now the minority whip, she doesn't really endorse much because she said they explained that as a minority whip in Congress, if she endorses an issue, it basically puts this golden touch on it and makes it seem like it's higher priority than other issues. And we, of course, tried to convince them that this is a higher priority. This is pretty much the highest priority. And they quickly sort of dismissed that. However, we told them we would be back in touch with them, and they basically said, no, she's not going to endorse much right now. Only a couple of things a year does she endorse. So what we decided, Tony had already come up with a petition to Congressman Clark. We decided that it can't hurt to get her signatures, because she'll just see this growing movement of, constituents who care about this issue. So the goal is to keep increasing the number of constituents who sign the petition, and then to circle back to her office after that's been submitted and say, you've received this petition, there's support. This does deserve support for one of your golden touches.
Yeah. Are there other cities in her district that might adopt resolutions?
There's, I don't know, we had a list, we list all her cities on the back of the clipboard so that people say, well, I'm not from Watertown. Well, you don't have to be from Watertown. You could be from Sudbury or Wayland or even Woburn, which is pretty far out. But no, I don't know if any of those communities, though, are doing resolutions or are trying to do resolutions. I had, Peter, then I'll ask a question. Peter, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tony, please.
Well, I wanted to ask a little bit about the concept of abolition. And whether you, Denise, find that talking about abolition is hard to talk to people who know about the issue, you know, legislators and so forth. Is abolition a positive thing when you talk to people, or do people sort of say, "Oh man, that is really over the edge"? You know, maybe we can have some agreements, even though we don't have many left, other than the START agreement. But what is your take on the concept of, I mean, pushing abolition?
I think it's the only way to get grassroots involved, and without the grassroots, nothing happens. So I have two different sort of pitches depending on who I'm talking to. If it is a member of Congress or an elected official who may be skeptical, telling them that 2/3 of the world's country are already on board with this, sometimes gets attention. And we talk about that this has been the goal of every U.S. president since Reagan. President Biden, for Democrats who think, we remind them, President Biden said in his campaign, he said before the NPT review conference came out, our ultimate goal is a world without nuclear weapons. This is in keeping with what we've, and if that is our ultimate goal, then perhaps we should start like now on working on these agreements. So, and there were a couple, so I think, in two ways, it's really important to talk about for, and we have in relationships with some of our more wonkier folks in DC, some of the more arms control groups, and we have these conversations with them. And, what I said initially is one of the things that we always come back to, which is it's really hard to have a movement with people going, what do we want? Risk reduction. When do we want it now? Will not be heard on the streets of America ever, right? It's you big, bold. And there was a New York Times article the other day, which was about why progressive movements fail. And it was, it talked about that successful progressive movements have a goal that at first just seems like it's impossible, that you need this thing to inspire people and that people want to get behind. And they're not, one of our, Beltway friends said, well, no first use legislation didn't pass because the grassroots didn't get behind it. And I'm like, yeah, they didn't get behind it. Because once again, what do we want? Like it's part of something, but it can't be, we can do this. And so with that's the other part too, is talking about, we've eliminated 50,000 nuclear weapons already. We don't, climate being the other existential threat is a bit harder because we do need energy. We don't need nuclear weapons. In fact, they are a detriment to our safety. So I think, talking about the will that exists, the weapons that have already been eliminated, the way that people get motivated in the grassroots, which must be involved in any to make any meaningful impact on large issues, but particularly this one. Abolition is the way to go. And another conversation we had just 2 weeks with another person in DC when this came up, I kind of reminded him, like, we do have these other policies that are part of our platform. So it's not, we support these other measures as well. They're critical, particularly now, this idea of, being able to win a war with Russia and China. We have to, diplomacy. I have not read the articles about what happened yet with President Biden in San Francisco, but we have to keep talking. And this, again, it's not been a detriment anywhere in the grassroots, especially once people have a little bit of history, know that it's possible, and know that we're actually already supposed to do it through the NPT. And with other folks who are harder to move, I generally talk about the administration's support in their statements, not their deeds.
Yeah. Thank you. Peter.
Well, let me speak to your question also, Tony, from my perspective.
Okay.
Can you imagine if John Kennedy stood up back in 1961 and said, I'm announcing this grand goal, we're going halfway to the moon? It would not have sold. Okay. it would not have sold. People like to get behind bold goals that are clearly going to make a difference, even though they realize it's going to be very difficult. Okay. And John Kennedy didn't pretend that this was going to be easy. And he didn't pretend even that we knew exactly how we were going to do it. And because we didn't. But he saw that there was potential and that it would be a good thing for America to do for all kinds of reasons. And you can talk about the space race with Russia, but he also understood that there were also going to be all kinds of societal benefits in terms of development of technology and stuff like that. And it was a great rallying thing. So he chose a very bold goal, and it's easier for most people to get behind a bold goal. Once you tell them, we're not pressing for an instantaneous solution here. We want it as quick as possible, but we want to always keep our eyes on the prize. And if we set a goal that's too short, well, it might take just as long to get to halfway as it would take to get to zero, because you just haven't set a bold enough goal. So I don't want to dismiss people's concerns, but in fact, there is no such thing as safe, okay? We know that a couple hundred nuclear weapons would be devastating to the whole world. So how many do we want to get down to? Well, some people have said, well, okay, how about one per country? Well, I grant you, that is not going to end the civilization if 9 countries have one nuclear weapon. But, for God's sake, it is here's the other reason you want to get rid of them. And you absolutely want to get rid of them. They are the most murderous and immoral weapons that mankind has ever devised. We should not have them. And Pope Francis has been very clear about that. He has said it's immoral to even possess them, much less threaten to use them, much less use them, because they are just indiscriminate killers of people. And that's what we did in Hiroshima. We killed 100,000 people in Hiroshima, round numbers, and 100,000 people in Nagasaki. It wasn't a military target. It was a murderous slaughter that frightened the Japanese into surrender. Okay, so it achieves its objective, but look at the terrible cost. You can argue, and I won't argue, because you can argue whether that was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, whether it achieved its objective, etc. It's done. So you don't argue about it. What you just do is point to how horrible it is. One nuclear weapon, and those were little ones by comparison to today's standards. So,
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. Other questions?
I just wanted to add that when people ask me if abolition is the why abolition should be the goal, my response is always a question. What is the purpose of having any nuclear weapons around? If you answer that question, the purpose is destruction of humanity, then the answer, is very clear that there's no purpose to having these weapons around. So, on the way to abolition, we'll have fewer, but we need to go all the way, so the goal should be complete abolition.
Right.
Yes, and even former Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis said there's no such thing as a tactical nuclear weapon. There's no such thing. Once you introduce that, the whole game changes. And then I think the folks at Princeton's Global Security Program ran a bunch of simulations, and every one they did, even what it started with a tactical one, every single one ended up in full-scale nuclear war. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to ask another question then, and this is a little bit for myself, because it's been a while since I talked about it. And so I'm just going to ask Denise to talk about what's the rationale that what is the government's rationale for a first use policy? Why do they think we need a first use policy?
I think I can't get into the heads of people who are thinking so differently than I am, but I think that it's about the belief in instill deterrence. Like you can, because I think, being able to saying that we can use a nuclear weapon even in response to a non-nuclear attack, which is our position right now, is horrifying. What other reason could it be than saying hey, if you don't hack our computer systems or bring down our banks or we'll nuke you? Is still this idea of deterrence. And of course, we know that it's just a myth. Deterrence has not kept us safe. We've had numerous near misses. and accidents and miscommunications over the years. It's luck, not deterrence, that's kept us safe, but it's still something that that we come up against, and that's why talking about a multilateral agreement where it's like, I'm not gonna, you've seen all the movies, like if you drop your gun, I'm gonna drop my gun at the same time. Like it's kind of gotta be like that, because one person's not gonna do theirs first. But I think if I had to guess, I would think there's, and also we can't ignore the role of the military industrial complex. We just can't. The weapons manufacturers and lobbyists, they have an awful lot of influence. They make a lot, contribute to a lot of folks' campaigns. And I think that's just another feature. One thing connected to that I think is potentially hopeful is that a lot of the folks, the younger folks that are doing demonstrations around Gaza are also really, some of the talking points are becoming about anti-militarism. And so some of that energy is focusing on militarism in general. And there's opportunities there with folks to talk about the nuclear weapons part of that equation.
Let me, I know, Susan, you had your hand up, but I want to just follow up on this a little bit with Denise to talk about the fifth point in the back to the brink, back from the brink. I'm the one who does it all the time. Back to the brink. I've been warned by my colleagues in our working group to be careful, so I'm working on it. Back from the brink. The fifth point is about defunding or not going forward with the modernization of our nuclear arsenal, our the triad of our nuclear weapons. Does that come up at all within your discussions with legislators, or do they just sort of see like we're going to spend this? What's the figure now? 2 trillion over 30 years, over 10 years. It's
did a bunch of new. My board president, Dr. Bob Dodge, has every year on tax day, which is his birthday, by the way, April 15th. Done a calculation of how much the U.S. spends on nuclear weapons, and then breaks it down per communities. He brings a big check to his city every time. This is how much we spend on nuclear weapons. But he calculates costs in a different way than a lot of other groups do, because he takes into the counts of cleanup, the cost, all sorts of other sort of hidden costs. And we just updated our a resolution to include the figure, and this is why we were like, you know what, we really got to put footnotes in these things and put some sources, because the figures that taking everything we spend, the U.S. plans to spend an estimated $756 billion, it would be between 2021 and 2030, and 1.7 trillion by 2046. To replace its entire nuclear arsenal, bombers, missiles, and submarines that deliver them with more capable, usable versions. Which, by the way, a big risk of doing that is testing, because if you build one thing, oh well, we don't know if it works with this part, so there's that's another concern. And then that calculates to U.S. taxpayers spending roughly 10.3 million every hour of every day. So that is taking into all those costs. So we haven't, that's been a point, one of the, that phrase, but for a word, my kingdom was lost. Some people get hung on the word entire. And it was, as I understand it, that wording in some place came out of concerns that like, well, we might have to replace a submarines in grade, so we don't want them to replace the whole thing, but it ended up having a complete opposite meaning for other folks. So that tends to be actually one of the more persuasive selling points with communities. But none of the meetings that I've been in anyway have had pushbacks from elected officials on that. I think other folks have come up on it, but mine, it's not, believe it or not, first use is one of the ones that
that's the one.
Yeah.
Susan?
So I just had a response about the no first use. One can argue that if you didn't have no first use, you wouldn't have to build new weapons or do a buildup, right? And so, that gets back to, I put my hand down when you talked about the nuclear, the military industrial complex. in terms of the amount of money that is being spent and the role that the weapons corporations play in our in what our politicians
Mhm.
decide. So the no first use is really important.
And, you know,
And
on
it does-
a moral
and it's
level,
like
it's like
it
the
won't.
lowest, yeah, it's the lowest moral bar you could possibly have, right?
Mm.
And we still can't seem to get over it.
Well, we can't give it up. Now that
No.
the US doesn't want to give it up because then they wouldn't have to put money into modernization, you know?
I'm gonna move a little bit over to something that you, I know Denise, are really committed to. And that is finding ways to make this work with other social justice environmental groups. I know that's something that you personally feel very strongly about. What has been your experience reaching out to the campaign for moral?
The Poor People's Campaign, I mean, it was,
Yes.
they have, you know, abolishing nuclear weapons as part of their platform and their anti-militarism. They're the most welcoming, inclusive group of people. You know, going to the planning meetings for that march was just incredible because we would be on Zooms like this and there would be, you know, labor, reproductive rights, like every, you know, issue and sort of sector you know, seemed to be represented. And, you know, we would start with songs and it was just, you know, that was very, very welcoming. So, however, we haven't been able to really build much on it on a national level. And I think what this comes back to and where we do see more success is again, the local organizing. You know, in some places in Oregon, for example, they were able to bring in, you know, the Texas community, the Marshallese community, other environmental justice groups, you know, supported them in their resolution. In Philadelphia, which was organized entirely by the Friends. You know, there were folks with, you know, abolish nuclear weapons and white supremacy, you know, holding, you know, right together there. So it's, you know, I don't think that there's a magic pill, but I think or a magic, you know, one size strategy that fits all. But meeting, you know, talking about some of these intersections does get people's attention. And also it's just a matter of making, you know, reaching out. And that's, you know, resolutions are a great tool for that because they, you know, because you can bring together for this one event. But then the resolution's over. And that's what we're trying to do with some of the hubs, like for hubs to be in the Los Angeles hub. And this is also another thing I just have to say, because I feel sometimes like, you know, a bit of a phony because I'm, you know, talking about this campaign and I'm not, we don't have as much going on in Southern California as we should, but we did just finally hire a new organizer and we'll be building out our hub there. And this is, you know, one of the things that is really important to me is that we are talking to and reaching out to groups that don't usually weigh in on this issue, but have a common concern with it. So, and then, you know, Ira Helfand is, you know, just going, you know, he's talks to you know, student groups, to all kinds of groups and has really good luck bringing people on, not just talking about the concern about nuclear weapons. So I think, you know, in some ways, I'm changing my own thinking a little bit. I think we can be sometimes a little bit presumptuous to think, oh, well, somebody who looks like you is going to care about this issue because this is how it, you know, these are some things that impact people who look like you. This is not always the best strategy. I think, you know, we talk about the issues, we talk about the risk, we talk about these intersections with issues that people just sometimes just because it gives people a point of reference, like this they know. And we continue to have the conversations. We have a long way to go, really, in this this particular aspect. Our movement is still, you know, and not just on racial diversity, but age diversity. But I think things are that one thing with COVID, now with the Gaza conflict, localities are seeing like the world come to them. We're having less of like, what is this city business? And so I think there's more, there are unfortunately, because of the one upside of the state of the world that we are in right now is that there's more points of entry for people to pay attention to issues that they maybe didn't think affected them or affected them locally. Again, the faith community is really good on this because they're working on social justice issues. Groups that have like PSR that also work on environmental issues could sort of also have in chapters have another way that we can talk to the people who we work on this issue about this issue. That doesn't happen often enough, and it's frankly it's a point of great frustration for me. But I'm continuing to do the work, continuing to ask. Another just somewhat related, but that film Oppenheimer, we did a screening of it. The Plowshares was doing these screenings and wanted to do one in Los Angeles. And I was able, and we, in the talk afterwards, we wanted to really focus on the intersections and had Alex Jassett from our office do that. And all of our staff went. We have a not large staff, not 22 staff. 1 and 2 1/4 of us work on nukes. Everybody else is environmental. And it made a huge difference for just within my own organization to see the film and then hear Alex, their coworker, who they know talk about climate and climate justice. They know him from that world. To have him then talk to them about nuclear weapons and social justice, just it changed a lot just in the way that our own staff, I think, look at the issue. So I wish I had more case studies to share with you, but I'm committed to making them happen. So a year from now, come back to you and speak, and I'll give you some more case studies on the progress that we made. But it is happening. It's happening in smaller places. It just it's another reason why I like this local model so much, because I think if we're going to break out of our silos and we're going to build bridges,
There's a way to do it
with the folks we share the commonality of our own community with.
Peter, I'm going to take you as the last question if you have one.
Okay, what a privilege. Actually, I have 3 things to say. First of all, well, let me start with another one. Denise mentioned the magic name Ira Helfand, and anybody here who doesn't know who Ira Helfand is has missed out on something. So there's a reason why Massachusetts has more cities and towns signed up for in support of Back from the Brink, and the reason is Dr. Ira Helfand. I can say more about it if somebody wants or whatever. Anyway, and so having mentioned his name, I would like to call everybody's attention to a letter to the editor in today's Washington Post, signed by Dr. Ira Helfand and Archbishop John Wester, the Catholic prelate who has come out so clearly calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons, and is now on, being very, very public about it, and so on and so on. It has my name on it also because I instigated it and so on and did a lot of legwork to get it happen. But that letter asks Xi and Biden at their summit to address this issue in a meaningful way. Stop this namby-pamby stuff about saying a nuclear war can never be won and should never be fought, and get on with getting rid of nuclear weapons. We put that letter in there not because we expect it's going to sway them. Neither of them saw it before they got it because it was only in today's Washington Post. We put it in there because we want to raise people's attention. And so if you find that letter, it's I think a very succinct case for the abolition of nuclear weapons and deals with some of these issues. And use it in any way you can to engender discussion. It's not often that you get a letter in the Washington Post that is as clear as this one is. And as the Washington Post actually helped me make it even better, which was really wonderful. So the other thing I'd add is I am available to talk. If you need somebody to talk at some meeting, I don't care how big it is. Last 2 months ago, I gave 2 talks on the Cape and 2 talks in Attleboro, and I'll go anywhere.
Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Oh, we're going to have another question. Jean, do you have your hand up?
My mute on. Peter, would you send us a way of getting to that letter. Washington Post has a paywall, and so you can't read it if you don't subscribe. And I saw that you had sent it around, or sent around the link to Washington Post. I wonder if you can actually put the letter somewhere where we can access it.
Let me think. Okay, Gene, I'd be happy to do that, except I got to figure out how to do that, because
But one thing you could do, I mean, is it possible? Is it possible that MAPPA would be willing to? I don't know how to do it, because you have to concern yourself with the fact that the Washington Post doesn't want you to send it to other people if they just published it. But
oh no, they won't have a problem with it. It's
They won't.
public. They absolutely will not have a problem with that. They'd love to have their stuff reprinted anywhere. Okay.
okay,
So that's not a problem.
maybe MAPPA can reprint it on its website.
Yeah, when Susan got off, it would be Susan Mirsky who would.
No, Susan's right there. She's just hiding.
She's hiding.
I
Okay.
can make it
I'm
into a
here. We
PDF and
can
email
talk
it
about
to you.
that.
Wait, did Denise had a point? Did you say something, Denise, about the
Yeah,
letter?
I can turn this into a PDF and email it to you right
Oh.
now, and then you could.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, you have my email address. I think Susan's on that link, and so is Anna.
Yeah, but Gene's bringing up a better point, which is that instead of having to ask for it, or be on some mailing list, can we make it more accessible? So why don't Susan and Mirsky and I go to work on that on the.
Okay, that'd be fine. That'd be great. We'll put it on our website as soon as you send it out. So we'll work on that. Pam, your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to say any subscriber to the Washington Post can share a gift link. And you just go to the buttons that says share and the dialogue will come up, if you want to do it as a gift, and you share that link, and then anyone can read it. I believe it's for 1 week.
Okay, great. That's a good point. Good. Any other questions? Diana, did you have a question?
Yes, please. This could be for either Anna or for Denise. Since the risk of accidental nuclear war is so great, is anyone taking seriously the idea of getting the weapons off hair trigger alert? This has bothered me for about 20, 30 years, however long I've been involved with it. And that really scares me to death. So if anyone has any idea whether anybody's taking that seriously, I would love to hear it. Thank you.
No, I have not heard. It seems to me there was some years ago, there was some discourse of some movement in Congress around this, but I have not heard anything, any energy behind this. Of course, you know, the Bruce Blair, who ended up with Global Zero, was a former Minuteman and wrote and talked very passionately about this issue. And we know, of course, that there have been reports coming out saying we don't need all three legs of the triad. Like maybe we could get rid of the land-based bombers. And so there's been conversation to that effect, which is a little bit tied in, because if we didn't have, you know, that would at least be one leg that was not there that wouldn't be at risk. But unfortunately, I've not heard, and again, I'm not everywhere in all places, so there could be something I don't know about, but I haven't.
Well, it is one of the, I'm sorry, Diana.
No, I was just going to say, I would just think that would be to everybody's advantage to not have it on a launch on warning status.
I mean, it gets support through our resolutions. It's one of our, you know, one of our policy points. And so that has not been, I've not heard anybody get stopped up on that one yet. Like that gets a lot of head nods.
And Diane,
Thank you.
one of the reasons that I feel Back from the Brink is one of the most thoughtful campaigns is because it incorporates all of these points. So none of them on their own is enough. And we need to be broad. I mean, some people say, well, isn't it asking too much to ask somebody not to do, you know, not to be on hair trigger alert and not to use weapons first and not to aim for this huge upgrade in our weaponry. But if we do one of them and not the other 4 points, we're failing ourselves. It's kind of like trying to aim for abolition with only eliminating 2 of the weapons or 10 of the weapons. Like, we need to be comprehensive in our thinking, otherwise we're shortchanging ourselves. So
Thank you.
Okay, folks, it's just about 8:25. I don't know what time it is in Michigan. What time is it in Michigan?
Same time.
Same time? Okay, there you go. There's my geography showing itself. We want to thank you all first for attending. We really appreciate it. And Susan, thank you for your co-sponsorship and the work that you can do continue. Anna, it's wonderful to get to meet you and to hear your passion. It's clearly your passion about addressing this issue. And Denise has just been fabulous. Thank you so, so much. We really do appreciate you and what you do. That slide presentation that you did, I'm gonna obviously put the whole thing on our website, but is that slide presentation on the website?
Not this one. I created it especially for you.
Well, thank you.
There's ones that have some of the same slides, but
Okay.
I'd be happy to send it to you.
Okay, thank you. That would be great. Well, once again, thank everybody for attending, and really, we really appreciate you taking the time, Denise. And let's all kind of take from from Denise that passion that she has about this, which you heard in her presentation, and see if we can do some work with it too. So thank you and good night, all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank
Right.